We're here. We're doing weighing in. Here we are again. What is this? Week number 4?
5.
Week 5. Week 5. Really?
Damn, time goes by.
Damn, it's been fun. 5 weeks with you. Here with Big John. Obviously, everyone knows Big John. I don't need to really give the introduction, but Big John McCarthy and myself, Josh Thomson. But all right, we were talking a little bit off air. I want to talk more about the whiskey. You got all the whiskey behind you. Let's just talk. I mean,
let's go.
Yeah, I saw the proper 12 earlier, and you're like, yeah, that stuff is shit. But again, we were talking. You pulled out the Jameson's Crested. What? I have no idea about whiskey. I don't drink whiskey. I don't have enough dead taste buds to drink whiskey. I heard they all die later on. Dead taste buds. Yes, they heard they die later, and that's when you start to enjoy whiskey. Is when more of your taste buds die. That's what I've heard.
You know. No, look at, you know what? Whiskey is got, there's so many varieties of whiskey, and people don't understand whiskey. And whiskey's got, like, you've got Kentucky bourbon, that's a whiskey.
Yeah.
And then you got Tennessee whiskey, which goes through another distill process. And then you go into Scotch, which is another Scotch whiskey that goes through another process. And so it just depends on, what you like and how harsh you like it. But Jameson's is famous from Ireland. That's what, proper 12 is Conor McGregor's, and he's working against that. And look at his advertising and what he's doing. Man, he's killing it.
Yeah.
But Jameson's is definitely the number one Irish whiskey I think there is. And Crested is one that you can't get here in the States. You can buy it in Ireland, but you cannot buy it here in the States. So that bottle that you see, that came from Ireland, and I give it out sparingly because I have to get back to Ireland where you're going, so I'm gonna have you buy me a bottle of Crested and carry that sucker over.
I would love to do that for you. It might be a couple drinks missing because I want to see what all the hype is about.
And that's okay. You can do that. I have no problem with that.
Oh man, I'm excited to go because I want to do the Jameson's tour out there. You guys did that last time you guys were there, right?
Yeah. If you know what, if you're gonna go do the Jameson tour, you have got to do what's called the shaker class.
Okay.
Which is they actually teach you how to make drinks like a whiskey sour, an old fashioned. They're going to teach you how Jameson does it and stuff. Yeah. You sit there and make the drinks and you drink them and stuff, and it's a good time, and you actually learn it. It's fun and it tastes great.
Good. Now I just need to remember that. Take the shaker class, go there. Now I'm supposed to do the Jameson and the Guinness tour all in one day. This is gonna be a rough day.
That's a rough day.
I was told that I should do the Jameson first, because that's when you need to actually have still taste buds, and then go to the Guinness, and beer is beer kind of thing. Obviously it's going to taste good, but, Guinness is everyone enjoy the Guinness, but the Jameson's where you really want to make sure that you're a little bit more sober.
Yeah, the one thing you're going to learn about the Guinness is, man, with Guinness, it's all about how it's poured and how it's prepared, because there's a system to it.
Yeah.
And they'll teach you the system, and you'll see a lot of places in the States, if you order a Guinness, they just bang it out, hand it to you, and that's not the way you do a Guinness. And there's something, I don't know why, I can't tell you why, but there is a difference between having a Guinness here in the States and there in Ireland.
So when I lived up in Idaho, I remember there was a bunch of different ways that I'd seen people pour it. I've just seen them pour it right out of the tap, just straight into the cup, which I obviously is not the right way. I've also seen them put a bent spoon, and they slow pour it over the bent spoon. I've seen that. Okay. And then I've also seen them like put something in it. It's like a little bit of a mushroom that they put on the inside of the cup, and they pour it over that, and then they pull the mushroom out at the end. So
don't put any mushroom in my beer. No fruit in beer, no mushrooms in beer.
No, they pull the mushroom out. It's like, it looks like a mushroom, but it's like a steel. It's almost like serves the same purpose as the spoon, where it kind of slow pours over the side of it into the cup, but I don't know. Yeah. Who knows, man?
No, man. You take it, and they're gonna pour it. And they're gonna pour just about that much into it, and let it sit. And then they're gonna come back and re-pour again, and let it sit, and then pour that last bit. I don't know why it makes a huge difference. You let the beer sit for a little bit, then you drink it, and it's one of the best experiences there is.
See, for me, I like to
stuff.
I like to step up to the bar and say, "Yeah, can I get 2 beers? Can I get them now, though? Not in like 30 minutes."
See, that's the difference, man.
Yeah.
You're in a rush. When you're my age, everything is slow it down. You're in that rush right now.
Oh man, I'm not quite at that age yet, so I'm gonna enjoy the speed for it as of right now. Hey, there was a couple things. There's only 2 things I really wanted to chat with you about. this week, and this week is I had a ton of people reaching out to me saying like, hey, I watched Eddie Alvarez and Demetrius Johnson's fight, but I noticed that he weighed in at 170, but he fights it lightweight. And I know this is definitely your area of expertise. Talk to me, like, we know why they're doing this now is because they had a fighter die over there from cutting weight and so I would like to know, like, how are they doing this? I don't like. Are they regulating it every week? Are they regulating it like every day? Are they doing it early in the camp and then doing it how are they regulating this?
Well, what they're doing, and let's give a little background on why ONE FC went to this weight issue and did something about it. And I commend them for what they did, because it's a serious problem within the sport. They had a fighter, a Chinese fighter. I don't want to say his name wrong, but it's Zhang Bang. Mm-hmm. But he died. He's 35 years of age. He died from the weight cut. Now, we've had other fighters that have died from weight cuts. And because, there's that whole thing about, when we've talked about this many times, Josh, it's about, these guys thinking they want to be the bigger, stronger fighter. But when you look at what is it that I worry about fast guys. And you got this bigger, stronger guy going into a lighter weight class. Usually the speed is what's the problem for him. And it doesn't work in the fashion that they think it's going to work. Now, that's, it's easy to say, but it's hard to get people to understand it and to get on board with it. But what ONE FC did is once they had one of their fighters die, they said, all right, this weight cutting has got to stop. We can't have this. It doesn't look good. Now, the one thing they have going for them is they are a promotion similar to a promotion of the UFC, Bellator, PFL, but they don't have any regulatory function over them. They don't have athletic commissions. So when they sit there and they say, okay, we're going to have you weigh in at 170 pounds, but you're a 155-pound fighter, they can do that. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can't do that with regulation. The athletic commissions don't look at it the same way. They won't do it the same way. But what ONE FC went and did is they went and said, all right, what is it that we need to do? First thing they did is they started having their fighters actually come and show and log their weights every day. And then at the end of the week, they would do a login on a computer, go over the fighter's weights. Now, could the fighter lie? Yeah, the fighter could lie. But they actually gave the fighters, it's called a refractometer. That's a piece of equipment that can actually measure the amount of water in your urine. Okay, because when you're looking at urine, and I'm getting into the scientific aspect like I'm a doctor here, but I'm not. But when you look at urine, I want you to think of, if I'm looking at it, it's going to be 1.000. Okay, that is going to be basically a very hydrated person. 1.000. Now, if you get to 1.002, you're still very hydrated. But if you get up to 1.030, so 30 on the scale, basically, you're now a dehydrated person.
Got it.
And it can go beyond that. And what happens is, when you're working out and you're taking in a lot of water and you go to pee, it just comes out of you fast and it's almost clear. Mm-hmm. But when you're cutting weight and you start to cut too much, you're going into the kidneys and you're doing things that are making the kidneys start to shut down. Your blood is starting to thicken and become almost mud-like. And all of these things will come out when you pee onto a refractometer or a specific gravity strip. It's going to show that there's not enough fluid in your pee. It has too high of a urine or uric substance to it, and that says you're a dehydrated person, a person that they would now start thinking of giving a IV to, even though IVs under ONE FC are not allowed. So the whole point is, they want their fighters to always come in hydrated, and that's a great thing. Where I don't know exactly where their breakoff is from that 1.000 to what point are they saying, okay, now you're dehydrated. I don't know what the number is for them. It could be, it could be that 0.020, we'll say, but that is telling fighters, hey, I've got to be a hydrated person, and that's only a safety factor for them in the fights.
Because when I talked a little bit to Eddie Alvarez, and he was talking to me about the fact that his first fight there, he had a hard time with all the weight check-ins and the hydration piss tests and just getting on a schedule, and it kind of threw him off that first week. Now, he's not making that as an excuse to why he lost that fight, but I feel like now he's gotten into the groove. He looked a lot better this last fight, got the win in the first round. But is this something where they have to spend more time dieting down throughout their camp to make it easier for them to stay hydrated and get their weight actually down during their camp? Or are they just strictly just saying, hey, I'm fighting at 170, but it's just going to be considered a lightweight fight?
Well, I want you to think of yourself as a fighter, and where you fought at was 155. Mm-hmm. What were you in the gym 2 weeks away from your fight? What was your weight?
170.
There you go. So were you hydrated at that point 2 weeks before your fight? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Were you starting to just cut down on crap as far as your intake of food? You would still eat a lot, but you just started not eating the bad stuff. You started eating just healthier food, and you're taking in a ton of water, but you're at 170 pounds, and that's what they're looking at. Because look, at this whole thing comes down to, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, if you step on the scale and you're 155 pounds, and a day later you're 170 pounds, and your opponent does the same thing. Why are we making this fighter go through that cut when it only endangers their health and safety? So ONE FC has looked at it and said, you know what, we're not gonna put the fighter through that. Now we have to go through all of these steps to kind of make it to where the fighter has to follow this rule and make sure that they're doing the right things in keeping themselves safe. Because is there someone that would try to cheat? Sure, there is. That's just the way, guys are. If they see just a loophole, an avenue that they can make something that could possibly give them an advantage in the fight, they're going to take it. So that's why ONE FC is having to go through all of this stuff that Eddie is talking about, all of these checks, all of this, the Skyping on calls, all of the refractometer readings and everything that are being done before that fight. That's because, guys in the end, if given the chance to cheat, a lot of them would.
So can they not exceed a certain amount of weight after they weigh in?
It's the whole point is they have that weigh-in because that's the weigh-in that they're talking. This is our 155. We say that a guy that is 155 as a fighter would weigh normally 170 pounds. Mm-hmm. That's what they're giving that jump off to, just like you had it. Now, are there guys that took that and made it even more? Yeah, there are guys, Gleason Tebow, he was probably 180, 85 pounds. Same with Thiago Alves, another guy that carried a lot of weight, but they were dropping huge amounts of weight and then not being able to get all of that fluid back in their system, and that's unhealthy. Because we're not only talking about, look at the weight cutting came from wrestling. Mm-hmm. All right, the only people that cut weight are wrestlers and jockeys, basically. All right, because there's a weight that goes with that. So wrestlers for years cut massive amounts of weight to get down into that lower weight class. And then we had several deaths that occurred. And with those deaths, the NC2A came back and said, all right, this is it. We've got to do something to stop what these guys are doing. And they made changes, and those changes have been good. They've made the sport a lot safer, a lot healthier. But the one thing on top that we have over what the NC2A has as far as wrestling is, we're not just wrestling. We have strikes to the head, and the brain is housed in fluid. Yep. And if you want to get deep into that, you have that skull, and then you have this thing called a dura, and the dura lies between the skull and the brain, and then you have the brain. Well, when the brain starts to actually shrink due to dehydration, you get all these capillaries in between the brain and the dura that start to stretch out, and when they stretch, the brain gets jostled, those little capillaries burst, and now you can have bleeding. And normally the dura protects the brain by being on top and almost cauterizes it with a pressure. But if you've lost so much weight that you can't have that pressure, now we have the problem that we could have a subdural hematoma and we could have a death.
Well, so now that you're bringing that up, do you think that's a big reason why TJ got knocked out so easily? Because TJ's been known to have a great...
Absolutely not a doubt in my mind. I have said for years, look, all these guys that are cutting massive amounts of weight, it has an effect on your ability to take a shot. It just does. And I can't tell you scientifically why. Years ago, Josh, back in the beginning of MMA, if I took a doctor and I said, hey, doc, I got a guy, he gets hit with a shot and he goes out. All right. And if you hit him with another shot, could that bring him back?
Yep.
That doctor would have looked at me and said, no way, man. Are you crazy? It's just going to intensify that. Well, what do we know now? Yes, it can.
It's happened to me a couple times.
Signal, that signal, it gets interrupted, but it can be shoved back together too. And that happens in fights. So when you look at what happens with guys that lose a lot of weight, I have seen people that I think have lost too much weight get touched with a shot and they go out. Now, I'm not saying I've been there through their training camp. Maybe they were hurt in training camp. There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things that can go on. But it's never, ever good for the person that loses too much weight when they get touched with a decent shot, especially one that ends up hitting them somewhere around the ear, snaps their head, just that jolt. It always seems to disrupt them.
Yeah. Did you happen to catch anything that went on earlier this week with the Dana White and Cris Cyborg stuff?
Oh, my God, yeah. Yeah? What'd you think about it?
So I actually played golf today with Coker, and we had a couple conversations, and one of the biggest conversations that we had was regarding Cris Cyborg and the comments made by Dana White. I'm going to go ahead and let Scott say what he's going to say, regarding Dana and that type of stuff, and that may come to a head this week sometime. But to touch on what I feel like needs to be said is Dana does what Dana does. Dana's a promoter. Dana's job is to discredit everything that she's done to show that whatever she's doing moving forward, it's never going to be as good as what she could have done here in this organization. That's Dana. And that's a promoter's job. Let's not, and everyone knows that, everyone that's listening to this show probably knows I don't have a great relationship with Dana White. Okay. And I'm okay with that. But the thing
I'm shedding a tear right now.
The thing that I'm going to say though, is that not just her as a female and as a woman fighter and as a fighter in general, or as an athlete, all athletes, especially I think fighters, especially her who's laid it on the line so many times. She hasn't lost a fight since 2005, and she's fought the who's who and everyone that they've ever put in front of her. So for him to say that she wants to go fight easier fights, that's not her. That's not her at all. It's never been her. She's always wanted the best fights. And I don't even know if she's going to end up coming to Bellator. They've obviously got to work out contracts and negotiations, but I would love to have her there. And I'm sure you would too. I would. She is an absolute doll. She's an amazing person. She is such a genuine person. And she is someone that has an infectious personality when you get to talk to her. And people don't get to see that side of her. And the one thing that I want to say is she is a female fighter, and she is someone that has always given everything she's always given it her all in that cage. Every fight, she's given it her all. And I feel like Dana, what he did is he not only, I get the promotion side of him saying those things, but there's been other things that he has said that has discredited her as a female and as a fighter. And I feel that fighters, especially her, need to be shown a little bit more respect. And for a promoter to do that, to me, that was... If you want to hit the low of what you could have said or done, the stuff that's come out of his mouth with regards to her is hideous. It's horrible. It's disgusting, and I'm not just and I don't know how to get into it any further than that, other than the fact that I understand the promotion side of it and I get that, but what he did beyond that is from the Vanderlei Silva correlation, trying to relate the two, and in the dress, and then obviously there were some other comments made by some other people that weren't very nice either, that still work for that promotion. And it's just, I feel that if anyone deserved a little bit of respect as far as in terms of who she's willing to fight at any time, any moment, there's no doubt in my mind that she wants that fight with Amanda Nunes. And for that to be said from Dana White, it really bothered me. It bothered me for the way he put things and the way he came across, and like I said, I've filmed shows with her. I've done TV commercials with her for Showtime, and she almost murdered me in the ring one time filming a commercial. I was like, hey, take it easy. This isn't live. This isn't live. And so it kind of bothered me. It bothered me a little bit. I wanted to bring that to light and just figure out how these negotiations ended up turning out to be the way that they did. You know, it was kind of upsetting to me, but in the same token, I know that he's a promoter. He's doing what he's got to do. But in the same turn, she's an athlete, and she is someone that's laid on the line. She deserves the utmost respect in the fact that she's fought everybody in the who's who in the women's division. And let's not forget that there would really be no women's MMA without her and Gina Carano. And I like to piggyback Miesha Tate on that too, because she was in that mix during that whole time. But let's be real. And Marlos Kunin also, those four girls, I feel like are the ones that kind of helped catapult women's MMA into where it is now, you know, and she's still doing it. She's still doing it really damn well. And I want her to have the very best. But I mean, I wanted to get your take and what your perspective on it was.
I want to bring up certain points here because there's so much misinformation out there. That's the part that cracks me up about this, because the media, I'm going to get on top of all the media people that are putting out reports of, well, Cris, you know, she's, you know, at certain times has had problems making 145 pounds. Never, not once, not once. The only time Cris ever had problems making weight was when she was forced to try to make 140 pounds for the UFC when they decided to bring her from Invicta as the Invicta featherweight 145-pound champion. And then they said, all right, we're gonna try to get her down to 135 to fight in their bantamweight, since they didn't have a featherweight. And they truthfully, you look at the people that, you know, they've had that are true featherweight fighters, they just don't have a lot. You know, they had Cris, she's a true featherweight fighter. They had the girl she just fought, Felicia Spencer, outstanding young featherweight fighter. Megan Anderson, that's a featherweight fighter. Now they've had girls that have gone up in weight from bantamweight into the featherweight division to fight at that weight. You know, Jermaine Durandamy did it. Holly Holmes did it. Yana, I can't even say her, Kunistova or whatever it was, she did it. They've had a lot, but they were 135ers going up. So Cris had problems in her first fight at 140 against Leslie Smith making weight. She made it though. And then she had real problems, and the video came out of her having severe problems making the weight to fight Lena Landsberg. But at no time has she ever had a hard time making 145. She has always made it successfully, never a problem. So I hear that talk about, well, maybe, you know, it's because she's having a hard time making weight and they don't want the problem with that. That's bull.
Yeah.
That's never happened. When you get into promoters, look at promoters are there to promote not anybody else, but somebody that is under their house. Okay. And if Cris is not under Dana's realm, he's going to try to make her, you know, sound like, well, she was a good fighter at one time, but she's, you know, she's getting up in age and, you know, she's not fighting the same and she doesn't have the same skills as my girl does. And, you know, I can understand her wanting to go and fight against lesser competition. Well, that's just, it's an outright, you know, it's a statement that's not true. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, I don't blame Dana for saying it, because he's got to minimize everything that is happening for his promotion with the loss of one of the very best female fighters that has ever stepped inside any cage, wherever it is, ring, cage, I don't care. She's got 2 losses in over 20 fights. She has fought, like you said, everybody that they could put in front of her. She made a mistake against Amanda Nunes, and Amanda is that girl that, look at, she's so good that you can't make a mistake against her. But I can bring up fights that, you know, I've been the referee and Amanda Nunes has lost. Yeah. Okay, she has had to learn from her mistakes. And Cris, throughout her entire run here, she lost her very first fight ever due to a submission, and then went on an incredible 20-some fight win streak, and then loses to Amanda. Well, you learn from losses, and you learn, this is where I made a mistake. I rushed things. I didn't do things right. So Amanda had her time to learn from those losses that she's had, and now Cris is learning from that loss that she had against Amanda. Does that mean that Amanda would beat her the next time? Possibly, possibly not. You know, they're two great fighters, and they're going to equal each other out. Who makes the mistake, who's able to establish their plan in the fight is usually the one that's going to come out on top. But when you sit there and you minimize what Cris has done for the sport of women's MMA, that's a big mistake, because as you said, look, I understand that Dana came into the game of women's mixed martial arts very late. Okay. Yeah. And when I say that, you know, this was back at UFC 157 was the very first female fight in the UFC. That was Ronda Rousey against Liz Carmouche. I did it.
Yeah.
All right. And that was late in the game. How many years had Scott Coker been putting on women's MMA? How many years before that had Jeff Osborne with Hook and Shoot been doing women's MMA? There are women out there that have been fighting for a very long time. Roxanne Modafferi, she's been fighting forever.
Yeah. There
was a girl named Jennifer Howe. What a stud she was. There just wasn't any competition for her. But when Scott Coker made the decision to put two women in the main event of the Strikeforce event, that was Gina Carano against Cris Cyborg, that was a huge statement to everybody that a promoter would put that fight as the main event. That was long before you ever saw that Ronda Rousey versus Liz Carmouche. Now, finally, Dana gets on board. Women's MMA is actually good. These girls fight. They're really good at what they do. They put on great shows. So all of it, you know, he's been trying to cover his tracks for a long time. He was trying to, you know, make sure that he had his golden child in Ronda Rousey, and I don't blame him.
Yep.
She was that good and that dominant for a while, but trust me, he didn't want her fighting Cris Cyborg.
No,
that was a fight he did not want. It was Lorenzo Fertitta that signed Cris Cyborg. It wasn't Dana White. So Lorenzo wanted to bring her into the UFC. Dana really didn't want to bring her in. And for some reason, don't ask me why, that's kind of just been that underlying current with their relationship. And, you know, if I just look at it, we are all human and we can all make mistakes. And, you know, if you sit there and you can't sit there back and look and say, hey, you know what, if I hurt your feelings, even if I didn't mean to, I apologize. I'm sorry. That's not what I meant to do.
Yeah.
That's what people do. You know, I just saw that Cris had something come out on her, you know, YouTube page or something showing a conversation between her and Dana, and her people went and added something to it that wasn't really there. And immediately when she finds out, she goes and she contacts the media, says, hey, this was done by my people. I am responsible, and I want to apologize to Dana White. How come she has the ability to say, I'm sorry, and it doesn't come back from the other side?
I feel like the UFC
doesn't make sense.
I feel like the UFC loses credibility, and they've lost credibility a couple times. But when you want to say you have all the best fighters in the world, and let's not look, I work for Bellator, but let's be real. UFC is really the biggest company in the world with as many shows as they do. There's no way to go around that. But I feel like they lose credibility when they lose fighters like Gegard Mousasi, and they lose fighters like Cris Cyborg. They lose these people that are on the uptake and to other promotions because their pride gets in the way and they don't want to do business. How can you say you have all the best fighters in the world when things like this happen?
Well, you know, the one thing that you know, in saying you have all the best fighters, that's for, you want to put that out for the fans.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of people that, you know, look at, they're not MMA fans, they're UFC fans, and that's okay. You know, I'm not going to sit here and bash on that. I give the UFC credit for being able to accomplish that. They became the Kleenex of MMA, meaning, you know, it's a tissue, but everyone calls it a Kleenex. So they sit there and they say that. The fact is this, you know, as a fighter, every time you went into AKA, whether you were fighting for the UFC or you're fighting for Bellator, you go and you work out with people. Fighters will tell you, look it, there is no difference between the top people in the UFC and the top people in Bellator.
Yeah.
None. They are the same. The difference, and I will admit to this, I believe this is the difference between the two organizations. Bellator is deep about 6 down.
Yep.
The UFC is deep about 15 down. So they have more fighters. They have more quality fighters overall, but those numbers create a problem for them in the fact that they can't get those fighters fights all the time, where Bellator is able to give those top 6 more fights, get them those fights, get them paid for it. So who do you want to be with? Sometimes you got to look and say, hey, I can't worry about the letters there. I got to worry about me, and I got to worry about taking care of my payments, and I need to get paid, so I need to fight. So this is going to work out better for me, and that's what I know a lot of guys going to Bellator have done.
Yeah, I agree. All right, man. Well, hey, that's our show today. We're going to wrap this one up. We're trying to keep this on a track that we've talked about.
Pretty good, shorter.
We're doing it. So I'll let you get back to your whiskey, and and we'll touch base this week, and we'll talk about next week's show.
Sounds good, brother. You take care of yourself.
Take care, man. It's nice seeing you again. I'll talk to you soon.